You ever talk to somebody who has an economy of verbiage where they can answer these succinct, complicated questions in very few words? That's how I felt talking to John Risko today. He's the owner of MSP, CFO, and accounting. And I was asking him these really nuanced questions about like, hey, what's the strategy for an MSP of this size trying to solve this profitability issue or this visibility issue? And he was like, this is what you do. This is why it's like that. And this is the thing that you do with that information. And he just kept answering like that over and over again. I even stopped the interview midway to compliment him on his on his answers. But it was a good one because he talks about the blurring of the lines between ops and finance, and inevitably how sales and marketing is impacted by your overall financial aptitude. So anyway, it's a really good one, guys. Another one that's absolutely worth listening to all the way to the end. Let's do it. John Risko. It's always nice to have another finance guy, a money guy on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Brian. Thanks for having me.
One of my favorite things about this interview is that you sent me a message. Do you remember what you wrote me or anything about that?
Well, I remember giving you some commentary on your book, and also on one of your LinkedIn posts, you invited people to be on your podcast. So just kind of reached out in the spirit of that.
Well, first of all, if you want good podcast guests, tell people that you want them on your podcast. But second of all, we were just in a coaching call earlier today, and we're talking about this exact same thing. The reason you caught my attention is you gave me a genuine compliment. And I'm a pretty simple guy, you know. When people go, "Hey, I loved your book. I appreciated that you said this about it," not the fake AI like, "Hey, I love about your company that it's an LLC and that it's based in the Southern California region. Anyway, so here's my product." You gave me a genuine compliment about the book. I think you even were like, "Hey, I left you a review or something."
Yeah, I did say that. But I think Dale Carnegie's book on how to win friends and influence people, that's one of the big nuggets I took away from that is you have to give sincere compliments. People understand when you're being sincere or not. So make sure you're doing it. So another proof that why that book is so eternally valuable.
Why a 90-year-old book on sales is still relevant today. And the difference between a compliment and flattery, of course, is the definition of flattery is a compliment that you don't believe. That you give someone a compliment that you don't believe is true.
That's good. That's a great frame right there.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about that. Whenever somebody does a great thing to get somebody's attention, that's my job, is getting humans' attentions and making them care about stuff. So I always am like, man, why does this work and why does this not work? And so the moral of the story is, if you want to sell me anything, just go in my inbox and send me a compliment about my book and I'll buy it. No, John, that's not why we're here. We're here because you work, well, why don't you tell the people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I founded MSP CFO and accounting to help MSPs understand their profitability better. I'm passionate about small business, and I'd like to make a difference in some of them in surviving in this really very difficult industry.
Yeah, you know, we've had finance folks on, we've had all sorts of folks on the podcast talking about. Of course, we all want to grow revenue, but the point of growing top line is to grow your bottom line. And let me just ask you this right off the bat: I want you to grade how accurate this statement is. There's two ways to grow your bottom line. You grow your bottom line by either increasing your top line or decreasing costs. So more sales or lower costs. How true, and more importantly, how helpful is that framework? Is there anything missing from that?
Well, I think that as a framework, maybe that's a little bit too separating something that really can't be separated, meaning you can't get profitable without sales. There's no doubt about that. But if you just grow sales without understanding your costs and making sure that you're doing so in an efficient way, then you're not going to be profitable. And I would say many MSPs do is they focus a lot on growing revenue and not on profitability. And so you end up with companies that are maybe $1 million MSPs, maybe even more, that can't answer the basic question, why am I not making more money? Or why am I barely getting by?
Yeah, why am I not making any money? So just more top line revenue, of course. Not all revenue is good revenue. We've heard that many times on this podcast. Let's just go for the jugular of it. Why is making more sales not the guaranteed way to increase my profit?
Okay, has to do with strategy. Let's do a sports analogy. Let's say you're a soccer team and you don't have much team speed, and you're playing someone that has a lot of team speed. And if you go into that game and say, well, okay, we're going to outrun them, we're going to out defense them, we're going to outscore them, we're going to, and just try and be good at everything, you're dead. And if you're playing the other team that has a lot of team speed and they say, okay, I recognize that, and they really exploit that and work that, they have a defined strategy and they're going to kill you. So really, I think it's hard to make money in this industry because a lot of people just really don't start off with that. What's my strategy? What do I do well? And they start out just as a tech that wants to have their own business. Totally understandable, but they don't define a strategy. They chase revenue. They try and get good at everything. Mm-hmm. Some as a strategy. I mean, I've talked to MSPs that try and do everything as a strategy for diversification. And at some point you have to recognize, like, I can't be efficient that way. I need to figure out a way to scale. So
to the sports analogy, like figure out, like, yeah, we're not going to be the fastest and the strongest and the best conditioned and the best shooters and the best passers. Like we can't be better at every single thing than the other team. Mm-hmm. So we have to figure out what we're good at, what they're good at, and then make sure that we set up our pair ups in such a way where we can actually compete. Mm-hmm. Meaning we can't just be the perfect IT company for all people and solve every problem all the time, because that's just not a realistic way to win. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly. And of course, you talk a lot about that in your book. Every time you go to a conference, everybody's talking about that. You have to get good at a niche. You can't do everything. So
yeah. On everybody's bingo card right now is ICP, TCP, whatever. Clarifying your ideal client is sort of like this catch-all exercise that people are doing to help increase your efficiency in your strategy. If I'm a small MSP, if I'm listening to this and I'm a 1 or 2 person shop, why is it not enough for me to go, like, look, I don't have a strategy yet because I don't have that many clients. Why can't I just get a 60 to 80% gross margin on my stack and just sell as many of those as I can, as fast as I can? Is that a good strategy, or is that not a good strategy?
Well, I can't say for sure that you absolutely can't do that. But if you're not narrowing what you target, you're going to have to charge a lot of money to make good money. And chances are, if you're not narrowing it, you're not going to be good at it. So how do you charge a lot of money while not being good at it? Mm. I think probably there are people that are very skilled at selling and maybe getting higher prices by fear-based selling. But I don't think that's a strategy that probably ever works. And if it does, it's probably based on just charging a lot of money.
Mm. That makes sense. So yeah. I want to go kind of from the ground up, because the topic of profitability, I feel like it has different weights depending on where you are in your MSP journey, So let's start on the smaller end of things. Again, small shop, just starting up. Mm-hmm. You know the industry very well. Mm-hmm. But, we're starting out, I guess. What sort of advice do you give? We're circling it now, but I've got a small MSP. What are some of the practical things I need to know? Maybe I've got 5 to 10 clients right now. 1 or 2 of them are break fix or project-based clients. I've got my tent pole kind of MRR clients that are just getting things going. I've got a tech now. I'm starting to get cooking. Maybe I'm investing in some marketing stuff here or there. Going to a few conferences, Kaseya's wine and dining me and flying me to Vegas for their stuff. What are some of the most important things that person needs to be thinking about at this time? Like, what does their relationship with profitability need to look like if their objective is to grow the MSP?
Okay, so I would say this is a competitive industry, a lot of players in it. That's the downside. The upside is that there's a lot of help. There's people like you, there's people like me, there's a million people out there that are giving great advice. And I think it's a good idea when you're first starting out to craft a strategy by reaching out to someone that's versed in workable strategies in the industry. You, for instance, I don't mean to give you a shameless plug, but if they went to you and said, "Okay, I got 2 clients and I'm trying to figure out how to grow here," I'm fairly certain you wouldn't just tell them, "Okay, here's how you get more and more customers." You'd say, "Okay, well let's figure out what your special sauce is, and then craft a strategy to go out and deliver that special sauce to the market." And what that looks like, even in the sales process, is that, okay, this is what we do well, and the customer says, "Well, we don't care about that." Conversation is done. The sales process doesn't take as long. You go out there and you have a clear pitch that you actually believe in and you're passionate about. People hear it and they say yes or no really quick. The sales process becomes more efficient right off the bat. And then if you have a special sauce and you stay focused on that, it tends to narrow your stack. It tends to make you understand the type of customers better. Let's say you have 2 customers, one of them is a law firm, and you figure these guys really like me. Well, maybe I should craft a message for law firms. And you can do that right off the bat. You don't have to wait till you have 20 customers and you're running around with the head with your chicken cut off, and you're trying to figure out how to rescue yourself from a trap. You can do it right off the bat. So to me, it starts with strategy, and you don't have to wait till you have a bunch of customers to start crafting it.
I really love that answer because I've not followed that advice so many times. Almost every time I've ever built anything is I've always been the grow super fast, and then we end up cannibalizing almost everything we build. The first $1 million of business ends up atrophying away because it was the wrong type of business. Mm-hmm. I've done that so many times. And you charge what you need to charge, or you charge what you think you need to charge, but you're guessing on what your future costs will be, how many techs it's going to take to manage a certain amount of endpoints. You're guessing. You don't mm-hmm. know. You've never done that before. You never had 10,000 or 1,000 endpoints. So you don't know how many you can handle or a tech can handle. So you have to make these assumptions, and sometimes you're over ambitious with those assumptions. You want to over provision everybody too hard. But I love this advice of starting with strategy from day one. Practically, and you tell me if I've got this wrong, but what that means is you could have 2 or 3 clients right now, and you go on and you book a sales discovery meeting, you realize it's not a right fit, you have to turn away that lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being able to hear no is I've come to discover a really crucial part of the sales process. Mm-hmm. Many people think that they need to get everybody to say yes, and so what they end up doing is saying, "Okay, what's your problem?" And they end up solving that problem, and they create custom solutions for every single customer right off the bat. And what that does in practicality is the owner, oftentimes a very talented tech, is able to handle that. He's able to create custom solutions and to some degree solve all these different problems that are very disparate, very different, have custom offerings. But at some point, he comes to the end of his capacity, and now he wants to bring somebody else on, either that be a salesperson or most likely a tech. But how do you train a tech to do all these things that you've crafted as a really talented tech? And the answer is you either find somebody that's as talented as you, which is going to be expensive, oftentimes even impossible to do. And so that's where most MSPs that go out of business, I think they have customers, but they realize, oh, I'm making a pittance for working 70 hours a week, and I could go get a job as a level 3 or 4 tech at another place, make 5 times the money, and be able to sleep at night.
Right. Yeah, and work way less hard than I do now for way more money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, every entrepreneur has to make that trade for a while. So this is the main. I mean, would you say that this is the cardinal sin that you see? The mistake that you see with MSPs who struggle with profitability is it's really a lack of strategic focus. Could it be that simple?
Yeah, that's widespread in our industry, but it's widespread across industries. Yeah, I think strategic focus is huge. And if you listen for it, everybody's saying it.
But it's a lot easier to talk about this than to actually execute it. Because again, not to repeat ourselves, but focusing on your ideal client or narrowing your niche means that you have to say no to some people who are willing to be your customer. Mm-hmm. and you're going to do all this marketing effort, networking, advertising, outbound to get people on the phone. Ideally, you're targeting that and you're cleaning that as much as you can so that you're not wasting too much effort. But you're going to get somebody who comes on and they go, yeah, we run all Linux, but we need an IT company. And you have to go, that's not within our area of genius. We all know Linux. I know how to do that for you, but we're really focusing on people running Windows computers, running a Microsoft 365 environment. So unfortunately, I'm going to pass you to another MSP. And you got to say no to people who are willing to write you checks. And that's why that's hard to do when you're not making any money. You're not making enough money at the beginning.
Exactly. And it's not that hard of a message to deliver. You can just say, I'm in this very competitive industry, and the only way I can survive here is if I specialize. And so I can't take that on because I can't do it efficiently. So I would recommend that you lead with that. And every time you talk to an MSP, make sure that there's somebody that can sustainably handle that, because I can't. That's not a hard message to deliver.
Right. Well, two things. First of all, you just made me think of this quote. I used to be a big poker guy. There was this poker player I used to watch on those, poker tournaments are on at like 2 a.m. This guy's got kings. Okay. So he goes up, so he bets, of course, pre-flop, and somebody calls pre-flop and he's going, okay, they either have a pair or they've got a high, whatever, they've got running card suited or something. So then the flop comes down and it's like ace and two lower cards. And then the guy under the gun goes in really aggressive. So then the guy with pocket kings goes, okay, that guy hit his ace. So then he's interviewed after the game. So then he folds. Like, he was in early. There's an ace on the flop. There's no king on the flop. This other guy ahead of him in the round bets really aggressively. He just folds his pocket kings. Now, pocket kings is the second best thing you can have in your hand when you start, right? The only second only to pocket aces. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter. A pair of aces beats a pair of kings. Even if both the kings are in your hand, you're going to lose. So somebody goes, how do you do that? How did you fold? How do you have the discipline to fold your kings? And he goes, oh, how do you muck kings? Mucking is slang for folding. He goes, it's easy. You pick them up and you throw them in the muck. And he just walked away from the interview. And he was so matter of fact about it. He's like, it's not hard to do, because I'm going to lose. But you have this a bad player's got sunk cost fallacy. He goes, well, I've already bet. I'm going to keep betting because I might hit my king, but they have just as high of a chance of hitting a 3. They have 1 in 8 chance of hitting their aces. You have 1 chance of hitting your kings. There's only 2 cards in the entire deck, which is a 4% probability of you beating that hand, even though you started with pocket kings. So he's like, yeah, there's a 96% chance I'm going to lose. So it's easy. You just fold them. But the reason I'm telling you that is you got this lead. You paid some marketing agency $1,000 and they got you a meeting. And they show up and they're like, we're all max and half our team's in Indonesia and there's 5 of us. And you're like, well, I do a 10 user minimum and I don't do max. So you go, man, how do you turn down a lead that came in the door? It's easy. You just turn them down. It's easy. You just throw them in the muck. And thoughts?
Exactly. Yeah, thoughts. So it's not easy to fold kings. I've lost so much money on that. And all of a sudden somebody goes all in on you when an ace flops on the board, and you're like, well, I can't fold these kings, right? I have to go all in. And the answer is no, you don't.
No, you don't. It's
so
easy.
I totally get that. But it's not easy, especially when you sat there for an hour, didn't have a good hand, and finally you got a good hand. What am I going to let go of this and sit there for another hour? Another analogy that I thought of, that my brother graduated law school with his best buddy, and they both decided they were going to go into business for themselves. They didn't want to go work for a big law firm. My brother just held out a shingle, said, I'm a lawyer. And his friend said, I'm a father's rights lawyer. They're in Omaha, Nebraska. There was nothing like it. He just decided, he picked a niche and he said, I'm a father's rights lawyer. And my brother said, but you're not a father's rights lawyer. And he said, well, I'm going to put up a billboard and I'll start talking to people that have father issues, and I'll be an expert within a month. I'll become more and more of an expert, and I'm just going to pick that. And this guy became absolutely rich. He's got just a thriving practice where, he's, a whole operation and everything. He picked a niche before he even had a customer. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying, okay, I'm going to specialize in law firms, and start calling up law firms and saying, yeah, I specialize in law firms. And until they start telling you their problems, you start learning their problems, you start solving their problems, and then just stick within that. It sounds bold, but it's not as bold as just saying, I'm going to be everything for everybody.
Right. So did your brother come to his senses, or did he make it happen with a general practice?
He's happy. He likes a variety. He also constantly envies the amount of money that his friend makes in his
Right.
specialized practice. So
Right.
his friend has said, "Why don't you come work for me?" And my brother's considered it, but he's decided he's happy with the variety.
Yeah, people think about that. It's like, it's a great example. It's a great example because let's say it this way. Let's put ourselves in your brother's shoes for a minute. And the thinking is, why would I turn down business? If somebody comes to me and say, I need help drawing up an estate, I need help with this hit and run, I need help with this maritime case, I'll figure it out. I can do it. I'm licensed to practice law in Nebraska. I can practice law for you. So he's thinking there's only so many opportunities in my market, in my small pond. Omaha's not that big a place. Probably a decent amount of lawyers there too.
Right.
So he's going, I'm going to maximize my total addressable market. That's a very realistic, feasible. And in a minute, we're going to play devil's advocate, by the way, and I'm going to grill you on the devil's advocate side of specializing. But that was his philosophy. And the harm, the thinking of why would I say no to business? You just need to look at the inverse of that. It's not that you're saying no to almost everything. You're saying yes to the best thing. And those happen to just be two different directions of looking at the same truth. We're not asking you to turn down business. Well, actually we are. But we're not asking you to be a naysayer. We're asking you to be all in on one thing and be the best possible option at one specific thing. And that could be an industry. It could also be a horizontal niche, by the way. It doesn't have to just be vertical. You can say, we help post-Series A startups get from Series A to Series B with digital transformation. Or we help companies that have been around since the 70s go through transformation into the digital age. And we solve that problem. That's called a horizontal niche. So you might go industry-wide or a few industries wide, but solve one core issue at a specific moment in a business's journey. And now all of a sudden they know how to contextualize what you do and why it matters, right? But I want to play devil's advocate for a minute because I've heard this many times said on my LinkedIn posts. We all know that specialists make more money per hour than generalists. That's kind of business school 101. If you specialize, you can make more money per hour. However, there's a lot of very successful businesses out there that do a lot of things. Like there's a lot of really successful, look at Amazon. Yeah. Amazon started with a niche. They were an online bookstore. That's what Amazon was. But then he realized, as he built the infrastructure, realized I could sell anything to anybody. And I could do it faster and better than anybody because nobody else is willing to operate at this scale and lose hundreds of millions for as long as I'm willing to lose hundreds of millions. And that's how they did it. Now they make billions of dollars a year. So isn't there, like, I guess my devil's advocate question to you as the finance guy, yes, in theory, one of the most efficient technical ways of increasing your profitability is to specialize and standardize and then optimize. But what about those other cases where people make ass loads of money because they can make their total addressable market as big as possible?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's one that you can easily be tempted by. But the thing is, Amazon figured out a way to scale. You know, I don't want to pretend like I'm the best person at summarizing Amazon, but they are pretty narrow. They take things and they sell them to you, and they have a distribution system, and they have a platform that you can go to and buy things. And so it's a pretty simple business in a way. If you take it into like the MSP world, you can make a lot of money taking on a customer. Let's say you get a really good customer. An earlier guest of yours talked how they had one big customer and it was the start of their business and everything was great. But can you scale that? Can you go get another big customer just like that? Well, that's the thing is if they're not just like that, what are you going to say? I specialize in doing whatever it takes for a big customer. Well, soon it's not a very compelling sales pitch. You know, what do you know about us?
I see.
Not much. And then if you do land them, well, now you have two sets of completely different problems. And how do you scale that? You have to get a different set of people to work over here and a different set of people to work over here. As opposed to if you're specializing, say, in dental offices, you're going to see the same things over and over again. The sales pitch is going to be the same. I know about dental offices. You can tell them the particular things about dental offices that you guys take care of, the software, the hardware, those things. And then you can have people that with not very, very valuable technical skills, bring them in and train them on the basic things there. And now you start to experience scale. And that's when you start making money. So not only can you charge more because you have expertise, but you can also deliver it more efficiently. And if you're doing the opposite, if you're not a specialist, well, oftentimes you have to compete on price, and then you can't compete with efficiency. And so you're competing with people that are doing just the opposite. And at some point you're gonna be dead, like a decent percentage of MSPs end up being.
That's the best answer I've ever gotten to that question, by far. Because, and to summarize, this whole, I want to be everything to everybody, that's great. But right now, you probably can't sell anything to anybody. So you're nothing to everyone. You're nothing to nobody today. So one of the things that specialization will do is actually help you impactfully compete in the industry. Because if a lawyer has 3 quotes, one of them is it's the slip and fall. It's the lawyer with the billboards and the benches who says, "Need a lawyer? I'm in your corner." And he's pointing at you. And the other one, and then you have another lawyer who says, "We're the accident lawyer. We get you the most money every time." And you get in a car accident. Which one are you going to call? And a lawyer says, "I need an IT company." And he's got one MSP who goes, "We solve all IT problems for everyone." And then another MSP who says, "We're an ISP, CSP, telco, VAR." And then another one who says, "We're a legal MSP. We have Legal Pro is our core offering, and it's designed to help lawyers." Who are they going to pick? What if the prices are all the same? What if the legal one is 20% more? Well, they're probably still going to pay for it even more money. And the only reason they would go with the generalist is because it was way cheaper. But they're never going to pay a generalist more than they would pay a specialist in a lineup. Right? Or very rarely.
Yeah, right. The sales process too is a lot quicker. You can we specialize in law firms. We're a little bit more expensive, but we deliver a higher value. And if people see that, great. If they don't see it, then we're looking for something lower cost. This probably isn't a good fit, and you left them with a clear message. They're going to go out there and maybe they're going to find something lower cost. But at some point they might say, "You know what, I'm going to step up and pay this guy because he's the only one who really knows what he's talking about. And really, he's the only one who really was able to listen to what I was telling him." And so your sales process is faster, you're charging more, delivering more value. It just makes sense at every turn. And also on the accounting end of things, if you try and account for somebody that's trying to do everything for everybody, they can quickly become a nightmare, as opposed to someone that's really made things simple. You can set up an efficient accounting solution for that delivers really good systems and great information for you to run your business. And so it has impacts on nearly every element of your business once you start niching versus being a generalist.
So let's go up market a little bit now. I asked you some of the tactical stuff for the 6-figure, the starting out person. Now let's look at low 7. Let's call it 1 to 3 million, because I think 3 to 5 is like a weird dark chasm in our industry. It's like 5 to 10 seems like the same amount of work as 3 to 5. But the $1 to $3 million MSP, now we've got a team, we've got some support techs, we've got some admin folks, we've got some people handling billing, might even have an operator, right, who's managing the support department, the service delivery department. So the owner is starting to zoom out a little bit. Is probably functioning as the cornerstone account executive for large accounts and projects, the key VCSO or VCAO for keystone accounts, and the reinforcements on the deep technical problems and managing their own internal infrastructure, and then starting to turn towards more of a true visionary role. What's some of the advice you give the MSP in that phase? Because now they've got some dollars coming in, but we find that this is where a lot of people squander those dollars. Maybe they're investing really heavily in growth, or they, whatever, what are some of the pitfalls, I guess, that you see for MSPs at that size that struggle with profit? And what is some of the advice that you would give the average MSP in that position to properly manage their profitability?
Okay, so that's a great question. We've been talking a lot about strategy, so I'll work this back to strategy because it always does. But when you've grown to 1 to 3 million, a lot has happened. Let's say you did that in 5 years or 10 years. You've gone through all these different stages. You've hired people, you've brought on customers with one idea in mind, and then maybe refine that idea. And so you have a variety of customers. You have a variety of systems that you've configured. You have a lot of people working for you that say, yeah, this is the way we've always done things. And now it's time to really ask the question, okay, I'm a $3 million MSP. Why am I only dropping 5% to the bottom line? This whole idea that I'm going to grow to a better bottom line is starting to seem unrealistic. I might be doing something wrong. I've heard other people say, oh, this guy's got a $1 million MSP and he drops 40% to the bottom line. What am I doing? I got 3 million. Okay, so I could tell that you're suspect about that. But I do believe that there are $1 million MSPs that have figured out how to really get the thing profitable.
Sure.
And then there's $3 million MSPs that are making it. They're growing and they have a bottom line and they have a vision. But let's refine the strategy, make sure everybody's on board, and reconfigure our systems now that we have a clearer idea of what our strategy is going forward. And what I mean by that is where I would come into play and where I would say, hey, I think I can help you is, let's go into your PSA and reconfigure it now that we know what your strategy is. And now that we've created a blueprint of how you would want to evaluate that strategy on a profitability level. Let's go into your PSA and reconfigure it and throw out some of the things that that maybe you've been hanging on to since the very beginning, and really ask yourself, okay, why are we harping on this? Why are we asking people to do this when we were not really using it? And then set up a system that's efficient and simple, everybody could buy into, that's linked to the big picture strategy, and people start to drop this is the way we've always done it mentality. They start to surface things like, hey, we're being inconsistent with how we're requiring people to keep time. Actually, the way it works at our company is that the more valuable you are, the less accountable you are to keeping time. That leads to cynicism among our techs, and we could really improve morale around here if we really just got everybody committed to doing things the same way. If you reconfigure your strategy like that, next thing you know, you can have a big refresh, and all of a sudden you can find yourself getting an inspired staff, a simple system, and the type of reporting that you can get that really gets you to understand, oh, wait a second, I'm losing money on these customers. I didn't really know it before because I didn't have that visibility, and I can confidently walk in there and say, I need to adjust your pricing, and I'm okay letting them walk if that's what they do. So I would always say that a refresh is a good thing to do at any point. And just to tack onto that, the whole private equity model where they take a company that's successful, they usually grab it and they usually do something to refresh it in some way. And basically, you could do that yourself. You don't need to sell out to a private equity firm to say, all right, let's just do a nice reset.
Right. John, let me give you a compliment. What I love about your answers is that you're not hiding behind niceties, and you're not hiding behind things that look like motivational LinkedIn posts. You're giving me real answers, which tells me that you actually know what you're talking about. That's why you're on this podcast, because you know what you're talking about. But it's such a meaningful answer that you just gave that, okay, we've got some revenues coming in. We're not profitable. We got to start we got to map the PSA, standardize stuff, and then find anybody who's like not in our deal box or not hitting. If the numbers are red, then we have to go in and be like, we're not charging you enough money. We're losing money on this account, so we need to charge you more money, but it would be cheaper for us if those non-profitable accounts quit. Mm-hmm. Because mm-hmm. we're paying them to be their IT company. Now that you've got some revenue, now you actually have data in the database to analyze. When you're looking at no records in a database, there's data intelligence is not an important function if you don't have any data. But now you have data, you have clients and activity and metrics and payments and all these things. Mm-hmm. So, I love the answer. I made a face when you said the $1 million guy doing 40% bottom line. Well, it depends on, I guess, your objective. If you want a lifestyle business and that's what you want, that's a great idea. Make $400K a year EBITDA, I'm assuming, right?
Sure.
Probably not $400K in cash in hand at the end of the year, probably. But
right.
The reason I grimaced is that there's no way you're investing in client acquisition if you're making that much money. So that means you're just waiting for new customers to happen to you. So the risk is that if you lose an account, you really have no predictable way of getting another one. You just have to wait and hope a referral comes in the door. Or maybe you're an owner and you're doing networking and you pay $3,000 a year for provisors or whatever. Maybe that's enough for you. And you play golf and you have an Equinox membership so you can meet, affluent people around town, and maybe that works for you. I love that. I'm not saying that that's not a good goal, but I'm imagining, right, if you have $1 million MSP, if you're spending 20% on average is an amazing CAC to LTV ratio in general. So let's say you're spending 20% of that revenue on client acquisition. That leaves only $200,000 a year for service delivery. I have a hard time imagining you're not under delivering, because you definitely can't afford to staff expensive people, smart people to like talk to your customers. You're probably selling a stack and a help desk, and then you don't probably have an operating salary in the budget, so it's coming out of a draw, which is out of that 40%. I'm assuming. I know you just threw out a number, so I'm overanalyzing this. Am I wrong there, or are you really seeing successful $1 million MSPs making $400K?
No, I've never seen it. I've just people are asking themselves that question, like how is this possible? And then they don't do the fundamental things to really analyze their own profit, where they can start answering questions, start becoming comparable to other MSPs, and start saying, okay, let me go find another $3 million MSP or a users group where I can finally start to say, okay, here's what I'm getting. Why am I only making this much on my projects? Why am I, do I have too many customers? Am I not charging enough? But until you really kind of take care of the refresh and get tuned into your strategy and get yourself the information systems that go along with it so that you can see what's going on in your business, you're not going to be able to get there, and you're always going to be wondering. And I think maybe there is such a thing as, like you said, an owner-led business that's just comfortable staying at a certain level. Yeah. But that's one of the questions you have to ask yourself. Well, what if I just didn't try and grow so much, and I could just have a nice profitable business that wasn't so stressful? And the answer hopefully is that I want to grow and be profitable and and have a really great thriving business, which those do exist out there. I believe that they're best in class. I think that there probably is such an animal that where it's an owner-led business and they make a really good profit margin, just doing everything right, and they keep it simple and they stay there. And maybe if you've grown it to your business to 3 million, let's say, and you're only dropping 5% to the bottom line, it's one of the questions you're going to ask yourself: why am I killing myself when this other guy's he's got a nice simple system and he's making good money? And so I think that's true, but I also believe that there are $3 million MSPs that are making best in class money, and if you're not, there's you can get answers to those things, but you kind of need to do some of the basic things, like like we spoke about, make sure that you have a good strategy, make sure you have good systems, make sure you do a refresh at some point to say let's get everybody on board and take this place to a new phase.
Yeah, I love it. Let me just throw my little contrarian gremlin food for thought in here. If you're listening to this and saying, the MSPs around me are running 30% profitability, how come I'm only running 10? Let me start by saying they're not. They're not running 30%. The best in class data is very public. Brian Hoppy, when he came on, he talked about this. Best in class EBITDA is nowhere near software EBITDA. It's just not a high margin business comparatively. And let me tell you, as somebody who's interviewed literally hundreds of MSPs about revenue, I'm going to say more than 9 times out of 10, when I ask somebody about how many clients they bring on, how much they charge per seat, and how much they're doing in like what their profitability looks like, 9 times out of 10, they give me incorrect answers. And it is always more aggressive. Always. Nobody ever says they're at 10% when they're really at 12. They say they're at 20% when they're really at 12. And I don't think it's always because they're lying. I think most of the time it's because they don't know. They just don't know. They think they know because they're looking at one report that's incomplete, or they're, They're conflating margin and markup. That happens all the time. So they say they're doing 50% in margin, but they're doing 50% markup, which means they're only doing 33% in margin, right?
Right.
But it's all the time. If you're looking, especially if you're struggling with comparison or you're feeling anxious about your low profitability or something and you're listening to this, I'm going to tell you right now, if you read something on the MSP subreddit about how much money somebody's making, let me set your mind at ease. That person is lying to themselves. They're not just lying to you. They're lying to themselves about how much money they make. Which brings me to this. And then, John, I do want to get back and I want to ask you about this, the profitability strategy for the $3 million plus MSP. But many of the MSPs I talk to, when you start getting into it, they just don't even know how much money they're making. They literally have no idea. Like they don't even have a budget.
Okay, so I can't tell you that you're wrong. When it comes to how much money they're making, they don't know in any kind of cohesive way. And I would say that, first of all, you said they don't have budgets, and a budget can be a back of the napkin, something that you put together, or it could be based on your true understanding of your business. It's real predictable, that it's like we're actually putting something on paper that we understand. We understand our numbers on the sales end, and we understand our profitability on the customer end, and we understand where things are going. We have a budget that we actually believe in, and I rarely see such sophistication. And if you don't understand your numbers, like in sales, if you don't understand how often you turn a lead into an opportunity and an opportunity into an actual deal, then you don't have predictability. So you really have to start with an understanding of how your business is working. And the vast majority of them have a very vague idea. They don't really understand what's going on in their QuickBooks. They underpay somebody to put the numbers together, and the numbers don't have integrity. They swing wildly. 1 month they're telling their kid he's going to have to go to community college, and next month they're telling him we're going to Disney World. And that's actually literally happening in the MSP world with companies that are well established and like $1.5 million, even $6 million MSPs are struggling to really understand their profitability.
Right. That's I don't mean to I don't want to sound like I'm trying to beat people up over this. It just really kind of befuddles me. I talked to a firm, a $9 million business, and I said, how many clients did you get last year? And he said, I don't know. I guess let's just say this, because again, I'm not trying to beat anybody over the head. If you don't know your numbers, then it's going to be very difficult for you to have a meaningful, results-driven conversation with a strategist. If you come to Brian and you say, Brian, help me grow, I'm going to ask you 6 or 7 questions to see if I can even help you. If you don't know the answers to those and you just make up the answers, then you're not going to get good advice from me because my advice is uneducated. Now you go to somebody like John. Now John's the guy. John's job is to help you come up with those answers. So the correct answer when John says, what's your profitability look like? You should say, I don't know. Hopefully that's where they start. And you go, okay, well, let's get into this. And then that's when you're going to start, sync into QuickBooks and putting in the basic infrastructure, just like you would, by the way, when a client doesn't know how healthy their network is, doesn't have a lifecycle management for any of their devices. All the basic stuff that you're like, how could you possibly be running a network and not know how old your switches are and your firewall is? That's how John feels about you not knowing your numbers. So that's John's purview. I mean, am I oversimplifying that, or you think that's a good comparison?
No, I like it. And one thing you said is, I don't know. I think all of us could do better with that answer. Oftentimes we feel like we're supposed to know, and it's really refreshing to have somebody say, I don't really know. And that's a great place to start. So right. I don't know how much money I'm making. I pay this, I'm a $1.5 million MSP, and I pay this bookkeeper who's really cheap. He's not very good. He gets me my numbers every 3 months late. And I feel really good about it. And I just can't see spending the kind of money to upgrade that. I've heard that. And so, the good news there though, is that you don't have to spend as much money if you basically integrate your systems. And what I mean by that is every MSP that I've ever heard of spends a lot of time managing their PSA, all the different bells and whistles, timekeeping, the agreements, configurations. It's such a complex beast, and they spend so much time. And if they would just take all that information and integrate it with QuickBooks and make it one system, which you can do pretty easily, now you're managing one system, and it's not that much more expensive to all of a sudden get a real financial handle on your business and understand your profitability and use all that effort that you put in your PSA to slice and dice your business in ways that really, really shed light on your profitability.
Right. Because the transactions that are coming in, you can just map that transaction to a line on your P&L, and then your P&L is like it's like 95% reconciled all the time in QuickBooks, because every single month you write a check to Auvik, or you write a check to ConnectWise, or pick your vendor. Okay, well, you categorize that transaction and you bucket it under what type of transaction it is, and then you don't have to keep mapping that every month, right? So it's not like you have to start from scratch. But you're literally seeing that people just haven't done that work. Is that right?
They haven't done that work. That's right. So that in your QuickBooks, you're recording. That's the truth, the financial truth. There, at the end of the day, that's where you're making money. And so one of the biggest costs in our business is labor. And so labor most often just ends up being put in one bucket in the areas of business: managed projects, time and materials, security, whatever your areas of business are. You're not really getting great payroll information. Well, what if you took your payroll and all the time that you've kept and compute a per tech average every month? Well, now you have a ingredient to start looking at your labor cost that's on your QuickBooks, but breaking it out into lines of business, looking at it by customer, by agreement, by tech, there's so many things you can keep track of your PSA. Now it's linked to that. Now you have actual profitability reporting on all these things that you're capturing in your PSA, which from being confused about your profitability to actually believing in it, to actually giving you the fuel to make decisions in your business. Like, okay, I got to do something better with this tech. He's drowning, or I'm losing money on this customer. This type of agreement is a big loser. It's obvious. These types of things start to become obvious to you when you just integrate it, and it's not that hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Man. Great stuff. Well, a couple more minutes with you, but I want to ask you about the stage of $3 million plus. So MSP gets over $3 million. At this point, you've got some dedicated sales folks usually, and/or marketing folks. You usually are going to have, they've outsourced to an agency or a partner of some kind to help them with growth. They've usually got some key relationships. They might be outsourcing to or whatever. They have some key cornerstones to function their businesses there, and then they have some strategic partnerships to help them with some of the specific areas. But usually you've got, I don't know, what do you see? Maybe 12 to 20 employees in the 3 to 5 million range, something like that. Maybe
a little bit more than that. $5 million would be,
yeah, 5 million might be 20 to 40 or something. So you've got a decent sized team, hands in the cookie jar. And this is where we start to see, I think, some profitability become more stable, because usually at this point we've got longevity of accounts. Usually the reason people get to 5 million is because they've been doing it for 15 years and they don't lose clients. Like that's how MSPs get that big usually, right? It's not usually a 2-year rocket ship up to $5 million. Those are the rare cases. So when you've got some time in business, we both know that's a double-edged sword, because sometimes you can have legacy frameworks and you've got vestigial record keeping, advice, or what are the problems you're typically seeing at that size with regards to tracking and profitability, and what's the typical advice that you would give as a strategist to come in and help somebody at that size?
Times even well-established Ps, their QuickBooks is like a vestigial organ. It's like the two arms hanging off of a T-Rex. It's like pathetic. It's not being used to understand their business. They're using their PSA with substitute, simplistic labor numbers to really come to an understanding of it. And the first thing is, okay, you have a clear strategy. It's working. You explained it to me. Let's set up your chart of accounts to reflect that strategy. Create a blueprint. This is what I want to see to be able to understand things. I want to be able to see how much I'm making on my managed services, my projects, my T&M, or whatever those are. And your PSA, and configure things so that now that you know that you can integrate the two, this is what I want to be able to see. I have 3 customer types. Great, let's set up 3 customer types. And now you'll be able to see profitability by customer type. You can start to see, oh my God, I didn't even know that I'm a $6 million MSP, and I didn't realize that I'm making significantly more on this customer type than I am on this. He has trouble managing their tech force. If you start to see true profitability, where your techs are spending time, are they losing money on that because your level 3s are spending time here and there? You can start to understand that deeply and start making management decisions with the data in QuickBooks. It's integrated with your PSA. So let's do that. You got the strategy, you have the success. Let's get you better systems and better decision making criteria, and that will make you more profitable. And if you don't believe me, what's probably going to happen is you're going to sell out to a private equity firm that's going to do that for you.
They're going to immediately increase your valuation post-acquisition. You could have gotten pre-acquisition and gotten paid for that work if you had sort of sharpened all that on that side. But the M&A guys I talk to, I mean, it's shocking how much they go in there. And the term that gets thrown around a lot in M&A is Hollywood financials. Mm-hmm. Right? Have you heard this phrase before?
No, I haven't.
So they Hollywood their financials, which means they make stuff up, or they don't necessarily lie. They're not committing fraud, but sometimes you'll bake HOS, hardware as a service recurring revenue, in with your services revenue in as the same one line item to make where HOS doesn't have the same multiple or net value as services recurring revenue does, right? So there's things like that people will do, or they will pull their operator salary out and put it in EBITDA, but they don't put a placeholder like, hey, you're going to have to pay an operator when you buy my business because I'm going to pay yourself on bottom line. You got to pay yourself a salary, and so they might pull the operator or not put in a placeholder operator salary. That's an example of Hollywooding financials. But aside from that, I mean, there's obviously the operational. I think what you're getting at is these are some of the tactical, immediate strategy things you can do to track and increase your accuracy of your understanding of your profit. And then from there, you're going to have an action list of a bunch of operational maturity items that you have to execute. You have to do something essentially with that information once you have it, right?
Right, exactly. And you naturally will.
Okay, and that's the point this is what I want to go home on with you, because you're not an operations consultant, right? Or are you?
You wouldn't place me in that category, but look up your sales book and expected a whole bunch of techniques on how to sell snow to an Eskimo, but it was really, it could be viewed as an operations manual, because how do you separate out sales from operations? It's the same with accounting and bookkeeping. It's well done. It's integrated. I can't be ignorant of operations and be useful to an MSP. That's why I specialized.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but point being that let me say it this way: if somebody were to hire you to support them, you're not going to be running employee reviews for them for their tier 2 technicians. Of course, you're not pulling the levers to increase the maturity of their operation in that specific regard. However, there's this blurred line between, to your point, finance is a segment of operations with a dedicated resource like a CFO, but how many CFOs and COOs, those lines blur all the time of those job descriptions, and many CFOs really function like COOs, to your point, and vice versa. But we want to drive home here, and I know I've kept you longer than I said I would, but don't just sell, hey, hire me and I will link your QuickBooks to your PSA. You're actually helping MSPs become more profitable.
You're right. And
so, what is that line? I guess what I want to get out of you here is you've given a really clear picture of we got to map it, understand it, figure it out. You're going to give them a roadmap. But if you had to sum it up, why is it that the MSPs who come to you that you support, their profitability actually increases? You said to see if you have any other thoughts I can glean from you on how or why that happens, or what you're seeing in the trends and so.
So first of all, I've been passionate about this industry for a long time. I understand the ins and outs of it. I've gone to conferences and sat in rooms with people talking about configuring their PSAs and how to get techs to keep time. And I really love the industry, the ins and outs of it. And these are the things that you have to get better at running. Well, if you run them, you really need information systems. And right now, I think there's a very PSA focused bent to this industry. And so if you integrate QuickBooks with your PSA, all these reports that you're used to seeing, like time, maybe even customer profitability, can now be shed in a light of true profitability. This is the actual bottom line profit. And you're going to start to say, well, I wish I knew this, because this is how I run my business. I just started this new strategy, and I'm going after security centric customers, and I really wish I knew more about that. Okay, well let's couple them with a customer category. What else do you know that? Well, I'm afraid that this new type of customer is going to really suck up the level 3 and 4 technician capacity. Okay, well let's get your report so that you can see by customer segment where your level 3s are spending time. Okay, what else do you need to know? Okay, some of my techs are not keeping time. Well, let's get your reporting so that you can start to see anomalies, and you can start to follow up and say, hey, your per hour cost, your actual cost here is significantly higher than the rest. What's going on here? I know you're not inefficient. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting to record time when I'm on projects. Okay, we need to fix that. And you can show them, I'm trying to run this business. I'm trying to make it in this really difficult industry. Help me help you, and start recording your time. It's not just something that accounting made me do as a control freak item. It's something that I actually need to do to make it in this industry, especially with you, my most important resource, my high level techs. So that type of thing. And then all the little quirks of your business can be configured and reported on so that you really understand them and can start to make the decisions that you already know that you wish you could make.
You have such an amazing verbal efficiency, John. I feel like you concentrate a lot of really good ideas in such a clear way. I got to compliment you again on it. This has been really insightful. I think anybody listening here has got a decent grasp of why. I think it's imperative that you invest heavily in your own transparency of your own financial data, because you have to know what's going on in your business, or else it's never going to grow. And there's a really good chance that you might be in trouble and you don't even know about it. John's just laid out all the things he could do for you, which is fantastic. John, if people want to get a hold of you to talk further, what's the best way that they can learn more about you or get in touch with you?
Just go to my website and hit the contact. MSPCFOandaccounting.com.
I love it. We'll have a link to that in the show notes for this. My friend, you have done something brilliant today. You have made me stay really interested in a conversation about finance and for an hour. And I really am glad that you came on. Thank you so much for reaching out. Appreciate you being on the podcast and just everything you're doing for the community. And hope things just keep going well for you.
Thanks, Brian. It's great talking to you. I hope we can do this again.